It's witchcraft.
Hey, it's 4:20 a.m. Hi, and welcome to episode 52 of the Stoned Witches Hour. On this podcast, two best friends get together to smoke massive amounts of marijuana while telling each other the spookiest tales from across the United States of America, representing all things ghosty and the
Brain toasties.
oh, and the marijuana brain toasties. I'm Layla.
And I'm Chelle, who's apparently coming up with good anecdotes for being stoned
I
today.
guess so. That's the first time I've ever heard of that particular one.
I just made it up. It wasn't really a thing until today.
Well, then you're probably not as high as I am at the moment, and that's probably a good thing. One of us needs to be at least a little bit less high.
I got to tell you this. This is so hysterical. And I don't mean to jump right to the weed stuff, but
Oh, jump to the weed by all means. I'm very happy to do so. I'll jump right along with you.
you know how I get when there's a deal.
You love your deals.
I'm a deal girl.
8/8 for 888.
288.
288. 8/8 for 288.
If it was 8/8 for 888, I'd hang myself. What are you talking about?
Your prices are supposed to be coming down, not going up. That's
Not
the wrong direction.
quadrupling.
Right, that's right. That's not a deal, Layla. Bad math.
So I love a good deal, and you know, I'm occasionally good with math. So I go to my favorite store, and usually when you walk in, there's like a what do they call it? 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper in a stand, and on that sheet is whatever the deal of the day or the deal of the week is.
Oh, sure. They have like a breakdown of their specials, like a special of the day menu.
Right. And because they're not allowed to like advertise it on their website or whatever because of the federal brouhaha, like it
Oh,
has to
that
be,
is such bullshit. Legalize it at a federal level already. The whole ATM crap and I can't use my credit card. I'm so over it. Let them use the banks for fuck's sake. Anyway,
all
I'm
they're
sorry.
doing, I mean, they think that if they charge us the extra fee that we're gonna stop. No, we keep buying. So anyway, so I'm looking at this 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper in the stand, and I'm looking at the deals, and I'm like, wait a minute, does that say 5 1-gram pre-rolls of GG4 for $30? And I'm like, wait. So that's 5 grams for
Holy
$30.
shit. Wait a minute. I'm trying to do the math in my weed saturated brain, and that still sounds like a pretty damn good idea.
5 grams for $30. So
That's fantastic.
in my mind, I'm like, okay, so like an eighth is 3.5.
Right. This is the one
And
time that Americans can do like math as far as like grams. This is
you
the
know,
one time.
I have advice for all of these governments out there. If you ever want to find out who's got the ganj, just start talking.
In ounces and grams. And if they
You'll know,
understand it,
you
they
know,
smoke.
you know. So I'm like, wow. So usually
Right?
I'm getting like 3.5 for anywhere between 45 and 60. So if I'm getting 5 grams for $30, but you know, I don't like pre-rolls really. And I'm like,
No, and in my experience, a lot of times pre-rolls, unless they're the premium pre-rolls, they'll have a lot of shake in them. Is this
but
good bud pre-rolls?
so you got to remember, so I'm standing in line,
Yeah.
high as shit, processing this in my
Trying to
mind.
do math. Okay.
And I'm like, okay, so I grind it up anyway. So not that I like to smoke pre-rolls, but I could rip them bitches open and empty them in a baggie and it'll already be ground for me.
Yeah,
So,
half your work is done.
right? So I'm like, okay, 5 grams, $30 pre-ground. 5 grams, $30 pre-ground. So I ended up getting 15 pre-rolls for $90. So I actually I ended up with 15 grams for $90 of GG4.
So that's $6 a gram.
Preach it. Yeah.
Wow. And now how much is it? How much is an eighth normally?
$60.
So that's like $17 a gram. So you got $6 a gram, and normally it's $17 a gram.
Yeah. So that's
That's a good deal. Hey,
So
I know that 17 is bigger and more expensive than 6. That's
So-
fantastic.
I've been breaking up these pre-rolls
Oh, look at that poor, sad pre-roll on the side.
and
You've
dumping them.
murdered that joint. Just smoke that bitch. It's good.
So then what I do is, because I don't want it to dry out, I've only been breaking open three at a time.
Oh my goodness. Just smoke the joint, Shell. They're
Yeah, but see,
good.
because it's freezing right now in the Northeast and I have to smoke outside, I don't have I'm too cold to stand outside long enough to smoke a whole 1 gram pre-roll. So I feel like I would waste it. So yeah, no, I'm breaking that shit open, dumping it in a Ziploc and packing my silicone pipe with it.
I suppose if I wanted to do a tea break, if I was going to take a tea break, that telling me I had to smoke outside would probably be a good way to do it. If I was in the Northeast or anywhere where it's cold right now, I'm not smoking outside. There's
Yeah.
no way. Not doing it. Can't do the cold. So yeah, if I had to smoke outside, I would probably smoke a lot less.
Yeah, it's the life I live right now. So yeah, it's actually more cost effective for me to break it open because I would just waste it if I was like taking a few puffs off a pre-roll, putting it out, lighting it back up, taking a few puffs, putting it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the deal of the day, man. So I'm laying in bed and I'm talking to my sweet darling love, and I'm like, I've paid more money in my lifetime for dirt weed than I paid for this.
Yeah, that's very, very cheap. That's very cheap. And I usually don't go for the joints only because, in my experience, they roll the joints with like whatever's left in the bag. And that can either be very good or it can be very bad. And so it's kind of hit or miss. But it sounds like from your experience, because this is not the first time you've done this, you
As you
usually
can
get really
tell.
good weed. So your place is a good place to do that with,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And maybe I'm just a little more simpler than some. But this was like the best idea I ever came up with for this price.
Now, what I like to do is you turned me on to this, and then I found some at a couple places in Riverside, California, was the smalls, the bags of the smalls, because
Yeah,
I don't give a fuck what they look like.
yeah.
And you keep calling them popcorn buds. People keep saying they're popcorn buds. And as a grower, I always learned popcorn buds as something very different. To me, the popcorn buds are when you're trimming, you have this big, huge plant, right? And you always see the big, beautiful colas and everything.
Right, right.
What they don't show you is further down the branch and further down the plant, the buds get smaller and smaller and smaller, sometimes even to the wispy side as a home grower. If I'm not very good about lollipopping or completely stripping everything off the underside of my plants, I'll end up with these teeny tiny, super airy buds that growers call popcorn buds because they're very little, they're very airy, puffed up like popcorn by air, and they're not usually worth a lot. So to me, popcorn buds means something very different. But I guess that's what they're calling these smalls bags is
You
popcorn
know,
buds.
and I think it goes back to you're overcomplicating it and
I am. It's
you're
true.
being like
Oh my
way too
God.
Layla scientific
Why?
from a stoner's point of view. They are thinking popcorn chicken from KFC. And little popcorn chickens are a little smaller than the regular KFC chickens. So popcorn chicken, popcorn nugs. You follow the train of thought here?
I am, but you you are so right. I absolutely have to overthink everything.
You and your
So
scientific bullshit.
I know, I don't know. This is where my brain is stuck. But I love, 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 love the bag of smalls that we get that's popcorn buds. And I love them. They're delicious. And who gives a fuck that they're
Now all I
small?
can think about is KFC popcorn chicken with
Mm.
potatoes and gravy.
They do have my favorite potatoes and gravy, I have to say.
You had to go all on popcorn buds. Had to turn it to
Popcorn chicken,
KFC.
potatoes and gravy. Now I got the munchies, something fierce. I am smoking not only my homegrown, but if you'll notice, I showed you some pictures of this the other day when my husband surprised me with it. But my new cutie bowl, look at that. It's got a
I
pentacle on the
love
end of
that. And
it.
I do love that. That is very, very, very pretty.
And it says Salem, Massachusetts on the side. It's got the pretty, it's all black smoke, a color glass, and it's got the pentacle on the bowl, nice big deep bowl. And then it's got this blue, light blue to dark blue, I don't know what kind of ivy leaf wrapping around it. And it says Salem, Massachusetts. The company that made it that is out of Salem, Massachusetts. They blow all the glass there.
It is a awesome place that I can't believe I didn't take you there when did I take you to a place like that when you were here?
You did. We went to
Witch
a
doctor.
glass shop. We didn't go to Witch Doctor, I don't believe. We did go
Okay.
to just a regular glass shop, I believe,
Oh, I
off
know where
the.
I took you. Yeah, I know where I took you. Witch Doctor is the place that makes all those pipes. And you can actually go in there and watch them blow. Well, I don't know if you can now. Pre-COVID, you could go in and watch them blow. And then they stopped it due to the Rona. And I don't know if you can go back and watch them do it again now since we have been on the downer side of that.
Well, when I come visit, not only am I bringing my new beautiful, wonderful bowl, but we're going to stop
We're
there.
gonna go get you another one.
Absolutely. And get
But
you
they're
one too to match because these are great. I love the feel of it. Sits nice in my hand. They're not paying me for a promo, but I'm going to put a link to their website, any
oh,
social
they
media,
do.
because I love
Oh,
this
they
pipe.
do.
It's gorgeous. It feels good. I'm so in love with it. So I am packing it with more gelato, some purple Milky Way, and some
Ooh.
gelato mints.
Ooh, what is Purple Milky Way? Talk to
I
me.
have no fucking idea, but I absolutely love it. It's purple. I am stuck on the gelatos and the purple strains lately.
You know what I had? I had a little bit of this since our last taping. It was called Michigan Mouth. Have you ever heard of
Oh,
that?
no, I've never heard anything about that. That sounds that's interesting. Where did
I
that
had
come
only
from?
I had only gotten an eighth of it was like tied over weed until I got to my regular store. So I had
Hmm.
gotten this at a different store, only got an eighth of it, and it was called Michigan Mouth. And if that wasn't the sleepiest weed I had in my life, I don't know what was. By name, you'd think that Michigan Mouth, that you get all chatty, you'd be all like,
You'd think, yeah. Mouth, of course.
no, no, you just wanted to like grab your cat and your like fleece blanket and cozy in for a long winter's nap.
Nice. Very nice. I
But I'm just these new names are coming about. What made me think of that? These new names are coming out. So what is Michigan Mouth? What'd you say? Chocolate Milky Way?
Purple Milky Way, and I got this out of upstate New York, out of a dispensary in upstate New York. It's called Purple Milky Way, and I've never heard of it before.
Where are these new names coming from? Are these high people who are just making shit up like I've always wanted to do?
That's what I'm wondering if this is something out of maybe a local farm or a local grower. I did look up and find a Milky Way cultivar, but nothing about a purple Milky Way online. So my guess is this is a regional cultivar or a very local, just to that farm cultivar where they either bred something that they put out as purple Milky Way, but I wouldn't guarantee being able to find this anywhere outside of upstate New York because who knows how well it's bred or if it's just like somebody's backyard muck cultivar. You
All
know,
I know, all I know is we're gonna have to really start changing the topic because now I want to eat a Milky Way candy bar, and I feel like no matter which way we're taking this conversation, it's leading back to munchy food.
all right, well, let's switch out of food. I'm going to pack another round of weed in my beautiful bowl. And let's talk about what our stories are going to be today. Now that we've talked about how freaking high we are, I am going to take us down into the South into a story that I heard about, I think like on Taps or Ghost Hunters or Haunted History or something a billion years ago. And so I'm going to take us down to St. Francisville, Louisiana, to a place called the Myrtles Plantation.
I feel like I've heard of that before.
Oh, you probably have. It's extremely haunted and it has been on a lot of ghost shows. And they bill themselves as the most haunted bed and breakfast in America.
Aren't they all?
They all are. Well, this one's in America, not just in Louisiana, but in
Oh,
America itself, all of America.
it is. I'm sure it is.
Well, I'm going to tell you a bunch of stories and I will let our listeners decide, is it the most haunted or is it much like Amityville House, a bunch of bunk?
Now, I think that's so funny that you're doing a house that could be a bunch of bunk or a bunch of realness, like the Amityville house, because so am I.
No, all right. Very cool. So we have the dueling is it or isn't it house.
Pretty much, but I think I'm totally gonna win this one. I'm just gonna spoiler alert right now. Shell's taking this one for the win.
Oh, we're back to our competition days of Shell versus Layla. But no, this house is really freaking creepy, Shell. And I don't know. I think
I
I'm gonna win
No,
this
no, no,
spooky
no.
story.
I have the most haunted house in America.
Oh, wait, no. Okay, what is it?
I have 7 websites and 4 movies to back me up here.
Oh, I don't. Okay, all right. You definitely beat me on the movies. I'm fairly certain, despite being on numerous television shows,
I got
there have been
movies,
no
man.
movies.
I got
No.
movies.
All right, do
So
tell. You've got my curiosity raised. I know it's not Amityville because you've already done that one. What is it?
now
Where are we going?
I'm gonna tell you, I want to just give you a little bit of my angle before I tell you, because everybody's gonna be like, oh, we're gonna hear a story about that house again.
I'm
I
starting to have some ideas.
I was flipping through on Prime. I am not a cable person. I love my streaming movies. So I'm going through on Prime and I see this thing called Sleepless Unrest was the name.
Talk to me, Miss Cleo. Is that on Prime or is that on Netflix? I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I also love a good documentary. So I'm in the documentary section and I find Sleepless Unrest. It is a 2021 documentary about the real Conjuring home.
Ooh, okay.
So then, back when the Conjuring movies came out,
Scary, scary movies.
but at the
Very
time,
scary classics.
but
Very
at the
scary.
time, I didn't realize, I don't know why. I was raising kids. I had shit going on in my life. And I guess I didn't realize that they were based on true stories.
Yeah.
So I come across
I'm
this.
surprised, Shell, because this is all Northeast and that was pretty close to where
I
you grew up,
didn't
where
know
we
that
grew up.
either.
Wow.
I didn't even know where it was. I mean, you got to figure back when this happened, I had 2 kids in high school, kids in sports, kids in music and theater. I was a busy mofo.
That's true. That's true. And you were not devoting your life to a phenomenal, amazing, world-renowned podcast devoting itself to spooky stories. That's true.
Absolutely.
In your defense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I guess it just didn't dawn on me the location or the fact that it was real. So I'm flipping through Prime and I find I find this movie, The Sleepless Unrest, and I'm like, wait a minute, are those Conjuring movies real? Now keep
No shit. Oh, so this is like just now, like up until now. Wait a minute,
yes,
Shell, come
yes.
on.
So I'm like, no freaking way. And I start watching this and I'm like, oh my God. I get on Google Maps and I pull up the location and I'm like, this is like an hour and a half from where I'm living currently. So I'm gonna talk about the Conjuring House, but I'm not gonna take it from the angle of the movie. I really like to more focus on some of the experiences in the documentary, as well as talk about the Warrens a little bit and some of the legitimate experiences that have been documented, not just the Hollywood theatrics.
Oh, I love that because, the movies are pretty well known and people are very familiar with that side of the story.
Right, right. And I mean, Hollywood is Hollywood. And I've done The Exorcist. I've done Amityville. Oh my God, doesn't it seem like I did that a year ago? Oh, wait, I did.
Oh, you did.
So The Exorcist we knew was loosely based. Amityville, it seems like, was just a bunch of hooey. And I'm telling you, I think this is the real deal. Like I want to drive to Rhode Island today. I think this is the real deal.
Well, you said it's only like an hour and a half away. I'm surprised you didn't do it already with your sweet love and then come back and tell us about it and take
Dude,
pictures.
I just found this out like within the last 4 days that A, it was real, A, that it was real, and B, that it was close.
Oh, so
Okay.
you just haven't had time to plan the trip yet, is what you're saying.
Put
Because
it
I
this
know
way.
you. I'm sure it's coming.
Put it this way. After I watched this documentary and then started doing some investigating about this house, I looked up, they have a website. The Conjuring House has its own website, and they offer tours. And you can do like, I think one of the options is like with a medium and a Ouija board for 13 to 14 hours overnight. And I'm like,
Hold on.
and I'm like,
Hold on.
I don't know if I want to fuck around and find out on that one.
How do you get the job to be the medium that's on call for hire at the Conjuring House? I mean, not, I would love that job. Don't get me wrong, but like, how do you get that job? Like, do they put an advertisement in the local
It's called
paper?
networking. It's a friend of a friend. You got to know people. You got to know people, Layla.
Okay, okay,
You
okay.
just don't know the right people.
I have to say, I'm quite surprised that other haunted places don't do this. I mean, on the Queen Mary, they have the ghost hunting kits that come with your haunted room. And this place has gone one step further and provided an actual medium to go
Now,
with you.
now
I admire that kind of customer service and, entrepreneurial spirit.
they do tell you, though, specifically on their website that they do not provide ghost hunting equipment.
Oh, just the medium. You get the
Just the
medium.
medium.
It's one or the other.
Can't have your cake and eat it too, man.
No. We will give you the EMF, the flashlights, the spirit box, the
No
Ouija
medium
board,
for you.
but no medium. Or you get Miss Cleo, the medium, to come with you, but no paraphernalia. One or the other.
I would like to just point out something and before I get a little too deep into this story.
And before I get a little too far into this bowl.
But, going back so I'm pulling this up on Google Maps and I'm like, what the fuck? This is down the road. When I pull it up on the map, there is a striking closeness to the Lizzie Borden house.
Really?
Like,
They're like not too far from each other.
like
So you
I
could go
just
stay at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast and visit the Conjuring House.
pretty much like
Let's do it. That sounds like an awesome weekend. Let's go for Valentine's Day. Well, it'll be a Galentine's trip. We'll go stay at the Lizzie Borden's house for a Galentine's trip.
I'm sharing my screen with you because this is hysterical.
I'm sorry, I'm cracking myself up over thoughts of our trip for Valentine's Day.
But look at this triangle on your screen.
Okay.
So where my mouse is, Salem,
Mhm.
Massachusetts.
I see.
Very beautiful seaport town.
Beautiful.
The Conjuring House is right on the border. Like literally when I zoom in, it's a mile across the border from Massachusetts to Rhode Island.
Like just south of Worcester, basically.
Pretty much. And then watch my mouse go down here, Fall River down. That's the Lizzie Borden house.
No.
You see
Oh,
how it's
wow.
like so close?
That is a triangle. Interesting.
And there is something, I can't remember what it's called because I'm high, but there is something called the something triangle in Massachusetts that's like some phenomenal paranormal thing. I want to say the Bermuda Triangle, but that's not it because I'm high. But there's some triangle of paranormal activity in Massachusetts that I know is near Fall River, and I'm wondering if it did encompass where the Conjuring House was.
It's called the Bridgewater Triangle.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
It encompasses mostly Tauntaun. Is there a fucking Tauntaun, which is to the east of Providence?
I think they pronounce it Taunton.
Okay, hold on, Shell. Hold on. Yes,
Guess what?
the Bridgewater Triangle is inside almost exactly, if I'm right. It looks like this triangle is almost exactly inside the triangle you just showed me.
Are
Holy
you telling
shit.
me that I just had some really super stoned revelation?
You did. It looks like you really did. So it is. It's right along the longest arm of that triangle that you discovered.
See, Salem is at such an angle where that Fall River angle
Holy
to Salem,
shit.
Taunton is right on that line, and then the Conjuring House is the other line. You see what I'm saying?
I do. It's almost like the longest line of the Bridgewater Triangle
Right.
matches up with the longest arm of the triangle you just discovered
Right.
between Salem, Massachusetts, the Conjuring House,
And Fall River.
and Fall River, the house of Lizzie Borden. Holy shit, Shell.
Like, I just think Massachusetts is one big shit show of paranormal ghosty activity. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. And in that area, it looks like there is one big triangle of paranormal activity.
And that also
That's pretty interesting.
And I just said Massachusetts, but that absolutely includes Connecticut and Rhode Island as well, because
they're all in that parts of that triangle.
Yeah, and they're all haunted as fuck.
They really, really are.
So the Conjuring House.
The Conjuring House. Okay, now that we've had our little stoned geek out about Shell's tri-state triangle of terror.
That's what we should name this episode.
Shell's tri-state triangle of terror.
So, like,
Yes.
this house is, what I have found out is I'm even more confused, frightened, curious, fuck around, find out. Like, I don't know. The more I find out, because I don't know now, after everything I've watched and read and listened to, if the house is haunted by former residents or if it is an evil portal to hell.
Oh, another portal to hell.
I didn't read anywhere that it was a portal to hell, but like it has all the signs that
Okay.
that the land it's an evil place
Right.
and that it's the land that has attracted all of these horrific evil
I
things.
see. All
So
right. So
I can't tell if it's a land haunting or just ghosties in the
all right.
house.
Well, let's start at the beginning because a lot of our listeners may not have even heard of the house, let alone seen any of these movies or, any of the shows or documentaries. So let's start at the beginning. What is the Conjuring House and why is it famous?
Don't go there. Even I'm scared. If
It
if Shell's scared, you should run.
is a scary, very, very scary story.
I'm not going to necessarily give you
Just
the movie
skim, just
plot,
skim. Yeah.
but I'm going to give you some of the backstory from the beginning. So this house was actually built in the 1700s. I can't think of the date off the top of my head. I'll get there. 1700 something this house was built, okay?
Okay.
So, as you can imagine, that's relatively early into us having those lands. We had been here about 100 years, probably at that point. So, this house is built, and initially it's a 200-acre farm. So, that's quite a bit of land. And it remained a 200-acre farm actually until like the 1980s.
Okay. Oh, wow. That long. It stayed like intact for a pretty long time as a
Oh
working
shit.
farm.
Wait for it. So the people who had this house built, actually, I think it was 9 generations of their family kept the property, 9 or 10, and they like passed it on person to person in their family. Originally it was called the Arnold Estate.
I'm sure it wasn't called the Conjuring House right from the get-go. That's probably not what they named it. I'm pretty sure. So good to know. Good. It was the Arnold estate, not the Conjuring House.
But, to kind of jump into the middle, I just want to let you know that a lot of the issues start in the mid 1800s in this house, and
Okay.
and it's because of what we love and know and have become grossly familiar with here in this part of the country. She was an accused witch.
Oh, of course she was. Of course she was. What for? Did she look weird? Did she cure someone of a terrible illness? Did she pick plants on occasion? I mean,
Well,
did she do the ultimate crime of getting old? I mean, what happened here?
she did all of those things, but then
No.
she
How
also had a
fucking
habit.
dare she?
She also had a habit of stabbing people in the skull with a knitting needle. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
Oh, that's all. Just a knitting needle in the skull. I'm sure they deserved it.
So obviously the movie was not filmed at this actual location. So where is this real farmhouse located? The real Conjuring farmhouse that it's often referred to by locals and the folks that live there, like I said, as the old Arnold Estate. And it's located in Harrisville, Rhode Island. There's a house and a barn, and they are both original from, like I said, around the mid 1700s. There wasn't a lot going on in the 1700s with it. People had come and gone. There were people who referred to it as other names. Some people called it the Old Brook Farm. Some people called it the Dexter Richardson House. The family that built it was the family of Dexter Richardson, so that would have been like, I guess, the OG name of the house. But nowadays, most people refer to it from basically like the 1970s till now as the old Arnold Estate. So there was this lady back in, let's see, what year was it? Around 1844. And you know how I am with pronunciations. I'm probably not saying this right.
Especially in that area. It's not you, Shell. It's the area. They're all hard to say.
So her name was Bathsheba Sherman. I'm probably saying that so wrong, but it's spelled Bathsheba, Bathsheba.
Yeah.
Um, so
Kind of love that name, actually.
she was
Bathsheba.
she was actually born in 1812, but she got married to a fellow Rhode Islander named Judson Sherman in March of 1844. And they basically bought this farmstead. Like I said, it was a house and a barn and then 200 acres of property.
Not too shabby.
Yeah, yeah. They had a son. She actually was an older mom, and this is, I think, where maybe her story starts to go awry. She had her first son at the age of 37. Now, you and I have had kids. You know how it goes. The older you get, the higher risk you are. And 37 is a little bit old.
Especially for that time. Quite surprising.
Right. So they had a son named Herbert Sherman, and they say that she had three other children as well, all of whom did not survive past the age of 7.
Oh, that sucks.
But they can't find any census records to confirm nor deny.
Well, depending on when they were born, they might have lived and died before the
In
next
between
census
the
anyway.
census.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right, right. So basically, there was no evidence to really support that she was ever a witch, only local,
Surprise.
right? Only local legend and folklore. But what happened was suspicion would grow because you got to remember this isn't a part of the country where they were only about 100, 150 years removed from the witch trials.
Right.
Suspicion grew when an infant mysteriously died in her care. When the baby was examined, it was determined that there was a mortal wound caused by a large sewing needle that had
Oh.
been impaled at the base of the child's skull.
Oh, damn.
So the townspeople believed that Bathsheba sacrificed the infant as an offering to the devil.
Yeah, what?
But due to insufficient evidence, the court found, so she was actually tried for the murder. The court found that she was innocent of any wrongdoing, but despite her name being cleared legally, the public already had convicted her pretty
I
much.
am actually super curious to see or I wonder what evidence was used to clear her name. I mean, a child being found in your care with a sewing needle severing its spine at the base of its neck, that's usually a sign that someone did something wrong, unless it was some sort of horrible accident. So I'm wondering what came out in the trial. I'm very curious.
It didn't get that deep. I am
That's
sure.
too bad because I need
Yeah,
to know.
I'm sure we could
Yeah, my
maybe.
guess is they must have found that somehow it was some type of accident, or she or someone else would have been tried. If it went so far as a trial and she was found innocent, my guess is it had to have been deemed to be just a terrible accident.
Well, also, just to point out, and I'll get into this a little deeper in a few, one of the folks who lived in the house and had some horrific experiences ended up writing a book in the late 90s, early 2000s. And they talk about some stuff that they chatted with a local historian about this person. So there may be more about Bathsheba's story in that book or through the local historian in Rhode Island.
Very cool. Okay.
So this lady, Bathsheba, she dies as an old woman in 1885, right after her husband died. She did live to see her son get married, but there are people who believe that she sacrificed all of her children, even though there's census records showing that her son Herbert lived and married and had children of his own.
I gotcha. So
So
the rumor went around despite obvious evidence to the contrary.
right, because basically this baby dies in her care. So now they think that her 3 children that died before age 7 were sacrificed to whoever.
Right. So the rumor mill, as usual, goes crazy, and despite her name being cleared,
Now she's a witch.
now she's a witch. I gotcha. Okay.
So Now, here's the thing. This is where shit gets creepy, though. Now, various articles online kind of lead you to the impression that when she died, not shortly after, but like kind of the moments following her taking her last breath, that she literally turned to stone.
No shit.
Or the other thing that is found is that she died from a bizarre form of paralysis that puzzled and frightened doctors.
Oh, so one of those things where like your muscles stiffen up and you can't move. And so the rumor became that she turned to stone.
It's kind of like that disease that you've heard recently that Celine Dion is suffering from. God bless Celine Dion. Love her. Titanic soundtrack was moving. And basically that's kind of what happens. Your body, that's how they describe it. Your body turns to stone. So you got to think in 1881, they literally are thinking it turned to stone, but
Right.
it could be that disease that currently Celine Dion is suffering from.
Oh
So
shit.
there actually is a medical explanation for it, but they might not have known that in 1881.
No, no, they wouldn't have had that information. Good point.
So, between them thinking that she died and turned to stone, and then all the legends and folklore saying that she had these children who died in her, and her children, that the one in her care, the rumors are swirling.
Flying
So
fast and
now,
furious.
the gravestone of Bathsheba Sherman is located in a historic cemetery right down the road in Harrisville, Rhode Island. So you can actually go find her grave and you can see pictures of it online. It's kind of like a broken stone, but her name is very clearly able to be read on it. So, yeah, I mean, she is basically still there. So now you've got this history of a supposed witch who supposedly dies and turns to stone, who supposedly sacrificed small children there, staying there. That's her house. That's where she's staying. She's haunting the lands. But how did they realize or quote unquote think that she was there? So you got to fast forward to 1970. And this is kind of where the Conjuring movies come into play, was in the 70s.
Interesting that these places that seemingly had horrific histories and laid dormant suddenly are active now in the 70s, the late 60s and the early 70s.
Have you noticed that? Because
Yeah,
there's a trend.
it does seem to be a trend.
Like The Exorcist was in the 70s. Like, what is with the 70s and all this shit going down? I don't know. Dawning of the Age of Aquarius. I
I
don't
don't, maybe it was all the drugs people were doing. Suddenly the ghosts were coming out of the woodwork. I don't know.
So she dies, 1881. All's well that ends well. Fast forward 1970. And the plot of the Conjuring movies begins. Okay.
Ooh, now we get to the really scary part.
So now you have new owners of this house. They have finally taken the house out of the original family. Remember, I told you like 8 or 10 generations?
Oh, maybe that's what happened.
That could be. Oh, shit. Didn't even think of that.
Yeah, and disturbed everything that had been settled for so long. Something new. Probably they painted walls and did renovations.
Right. So basically, there's this family called the Perrin family. And the parents, Roger and his wife, Carolyn, buy this house in 1970. Now, still to that day, 200-acre farm. So from 1700, whatever, to 1970s, we're still, the whole property and buildings are intact. 200
Okay.
acres, the barn, and the house. These folks, they like to get busy. They got 5 kids.
Wow, that's a lot,
Man, I have all I can do handling 2, and my kids are adults.
right?
Imagine having 5. They live in this house and they only live there for 10 years. Like literally move in 1970, move out in 1980. They started having some dealings with, have you ever heard of Lorraine and Ed Warren?
Oh yes, I know. Actually, I'm hoping to do a podcast just on Lorraine and Ed Warren.
So they actually gotten involved in this house as well.
Well, let's tell everyone who Lorraine and Ed Warren are.
You know what? I'm gonna munch on some M&Ms for a second. Can you tell them who they are while I just take a quick munchie?
Absolutely. Lorraine and Ed Warren are well-known paranormal investigators, a psychic and her husband, who researched and were involved in so many different cases back in the early 70s, 60s.
They were like the most famous, like,
They are the ones that were part of the Amityville Horror House. They're the
yep,
ones that investigated that. I believe that Lorraine was a clairvoyant,
yep.
and that her husband Ed was the demonologist. He was a demonologist. And they founded a school, they wrote books, they went all over the country looking for paranormal activity, looking for ghosts, and looking for demons and portals to hell. Very often, if you ever hear of anything around the USA that has any history of being a portal to hell prior to the 1980s, I bet you Ed and Lorraine Warren's fingerprints are all over it.
Why do you think I thought that this could be a portal to hell and not a ghost story?
Exactly. So there is a lot to the Ed and Lorraine Warren story, and we're going to talk about it, but we'll get into that at a later date in
In a
another
different
podcast.
episode.
That's a different podcast.
But for as it relates to this particular story, they were a big part of kind of bringing some of this stuff out. Now, I just want to backtrack for a second and just kind of go over real quick some people who've died there. So keep in mind, 8 or so generations of one extended family lived and died in this house.
Yeah, a lot of times they were born and died in the very same rooms or
Right.
very same bed in some cases.
And I don't know, maybe you're onto something, not necessarily with this specifically, but bigger picture wise. Maybe there's something about, 8 generations, 10 generations of one family in this house, and then all of a sudden they sell it out of the family, and that's when the hauntings start.
So often in these paranormal tales and these spooky stories that we find, there might have been small occurrences or none at all in the past. And then when the house changes hands or goes through
Right.
some type of renovation, things get stirred up, I guess. I'm not sure, but changes seem to kind of precipitate these paranormal poltergeist demonic activities. It just really seems to be a common thread in a lot of these tales.
So check out some of the people who have who died in this property.
Okay.
Over the course of those 8 or so generations, there had been 2 suicides by hanging, one
Oof.
suicide by poison,
Damn.
the rape and murder of an 11-year-old girl by one of the hired farmhands on the
Oh my
property,
fucking God.
2 drownings,
Mm.
the passing of 4 men who froze to death,
Oh man.
as well as someone who died during childbirth,
Yeah, sad
someone
but common.
someone who choked to death, and other tragic losses of life in the house.
Wow, that's quite the list, Shell.
Now, also remember when you're talking about like mid 1700s until like probably even up until the early 1900s, when you have a generational family land of 200 acres, you bet your ass most of those people are probably buried on that property too.
That's true. They very often did have a family plot.
Right, especially when they had that much property at that time. I mean, back then, 200 acres, Jesus, you own the whole freaking land. So a lot of these people were born there, died there under tragic circumstances, and then were buried there. As you can imagine, there's some shit going on this property.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So remember I told you the Perrin family who bought the house in the 70s, one of their 5 children, Andrea Perrin, she wrote a book, and the title of that, actually she wrote a trilogy of books called House of Light, House of Darkness.
Oh, quite the catchy title.
So if that doesn't just freaking intrigue you.
Yeah.
So basically, she writes this book, and she also was able to get with local historians to kind of delve into some of the history of the house before her family lived there.
Very cool.
And she was able to find that most members of the Arnold family died on the farm there. Most of the recorded deaths literally were in the family.
Well, again, that makes sense. They didn't have, a respite homes or, end of life homes or hospice care. They didn't have old folks' homes kind of things back then. You went home to die. You stayed with your family until you died.
Even Bathsheba was a part of the Arnold family. The only person that they have on record that died on the property that wasn't a part of the family was that 11-year-old girl.
Oh, poor thing.
Basically, there's been a lot of shit going on. So even they've even asked questions when this she's not a child now, but one of the children of the family, the Perrin family who bought it in the 70s, she writes in her book that this is just a dark place, just in general. Like the energy is just dark. How could it not be with all of that? Like that's not one or two or three tragic deaths.
Right, that's a lot.
And those are just the tragic ones. That's not dying of old age, dying of sickness. So when she calls her book House of Darkness, House of Light,
She
she
means
means it.
it. Yeah,
There's
there's a
a
dark
dark,
history there.
and someone asked her at one point why she named her book that, and she said, everyone who has lived in the house that we know of has experienced this.
Wow. Wow.
Basically, I found out that, how I told you that you can do tours up to 13 to 14 hours overnight?
Yeah.
There's no checkout policy. You want to know why?
Why is there no checkout policy, Shell?
Most people don't make it through the night, so they leave running and screaming and take off. So because that happens so much, they ditched having a checkout policy.
Oh my goodness. Really?
They
That's pretty good. That's funny.
They say some have left screaming and running for their lives. They said one guy came to help with restoration on the house, and he left screaming without his car, without his tools.
No shit. I want to stay
How do you leave
there.
without your car? How scared are you that you leave without your car?
You and me are just the fuck around and find out types that should go stay there. Would we go running out in the middle of the night or would we stay and just get more and more scared?
Honestly, when I was discussing this with my sweet love, I kind of equated it to your father's house.
That place, I don't know if even I could stay there overnight.
I said I made it through a night at Layla's dad's house, so I think I could make it through a night here.
Right, right. So fucking spooky.
So the question becomes, how did the Perrin family figure out that the spirit haunting them was this Bathsheba Sherman?
That's a good question.
This is where the Warrens come in.
Okay.
It was their suggestion. And that, I can't wait till we do that episode about them because, sometimes you're torn between these people are legit and these people are full of shit.
Oh, sure. I'm excited to delve into it myself.
But it was Ed and Lorraine Warren that brought up the idea that it was Bathsheba Sherman haunting the property. I almost feel like they led him down a path. If
Well,
that's
sure. They were the experts. They were called in to kind of explain what's going on here. So yeah, they would have had ultimate control over where the narrative went.
right. So the mother, Carolyn Perrin, she had told Ed and Lorraine about an incident that had happened where she had been lying on the sofa and felt a piercing pain in her calf and that her leg muscle began to spasm.
So she got a leg cramp?
No, basically she noticed a puddle of blood and a point of impact.
Holy shit.
She had a puncture wound and there was nothing there.
Oh, fuck. Like an out of nowhere puncture wound? Fuck.
Out of nowhere puncture wound, perfect circle, pool of blood. And Lorraine and Ed Warren said it was as if a large sewing needle had impaled her skin.
I see. I see.
Are you following the tie-in
I'm
here?
following. I see here.
So when they hear this story, they all of a sudden start telling her about, the story of Bathsheba Sherman, how she was suspected of killing the infant with the knitting needle.
So the Warrens are saying she was guilty.
Right.
Okay.
Lorraine suggested that Bathsheba Sherman could have taken the needle with her to the afterlife and used it to stab Carolyn in the calf.
Oh, wow. Fuck.
And then from that point on, Lorraine Warren referred to the quote unquote demonic presence in the Perrin house as Bathsheba.
Well, as we know, Ed is a demonologist, so all of these have to have a demon component as well.
Right. I mean, I don't even really know. I didn't even dig deep enough because I was so enthralled by the movies and the documentary. I didn't even dig deep enough at the moment to get the connection with Ed and Lorraine Warren. But that bitch led them. Is it me or did she lead them?
Or did she discover it? She come in as the sensitive and is told by this entity, whatever it happens to be, that its name is Bathsheba. And did she get that energy from where did the information come from? Did it come
Right,
from the entity or did it come from her imagination or did it come from the research that they did prior to going to the home?
right. And my other question is are you just going on that or was there contact? Did Lorraine have contact with Bathsheba, who was like, yeah, motherfucker, it's me. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
Too many unanswered questions. So actually, the interesting part about this is when the Conjuring movies were in the making for pushing 20 years, which I also didn't know. So at the time when the base idea and the script, the screenplay and stuff was being written, a lot of these players were still alive. Ed and Lorraine Warren were still alive, and a lot of the Perron family were still alive. And the family and the Warrens backed everything that was done in those Conjuring movies. They're saying it was all true.
Yeah, they say
All
that
true.
they stand behind every single thing.
Yes. Yes. It does seem that the house was dormant for a little while after the Perron family moved out. No one has been able to stay in the house since.
Now, was anything mentioned about Ed and Warren like exorcising the spirits or cleansing the house for the Perrin family?
No, no. And there wasn't anything that I found as far as it relates to the book either.
Okay.
I'm
So
about
they just
exercising
left.
demons.
Right.
They just moved out. It seems though that Ed and Lorraine Warren kind of they agreed with everything that happened, but they were kind of mad that they didn't have like a bigger role in these movies. And that kind of turned me off a little bit.
Oh yeah. They were very much about getting their name out there for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, as someone who has done stuff like that, the tarot stuff, the psychic stuff, if you're getting mad that you're not getting all this attention, that's a red flag for me.
Right.
But anywho, either
Honestly,
way,
with my introvertedness and with my own personality, I don't want the attention. Like
right.
I have a hard enough time doing a tarot party because there's going to be too much attention
We're
on
not
me.
attention seekers.
Right, right. There's going
Yeah.
to I don't want to be the focus of that attention.
I just feel that there is definitely stuff going on. So anyway, let me go back. The Perrin family sell they move out in 1980. Nobody's been able to stick with that house ever since. People going in and out, going from hand to hand, selling, buying, selling, buying.
That's a common theme amongst some of these haunted houses, whether or not you believe in Ed and Lorraine,
Right,
whether or not you believe in the Amityville horror,
right.
these houses change hands oddly.
Frequently.
Yeah, an inordinate amount of times, an amount of times that is disproportionate to the amount of times other houses in that area change hands or houses in general change hands. Like you mentioned my dad's house earlier. That house has changed hands. I think my family lived in it for the longest stretch of anyone that lived there. And that was mostly because once the adults moved out, adult children would move in at different
Right,
times. So it was still different families, but within the same family, and
right,
none of them
right.
could stay there for very long. And even now, after my family moved out of it, I've noticed that it has changed hands multiple times. Just go look at Zillow. You can see all the different, it just changes hands every few years, which again is very unusual for the area.
So you can keep a house in the same family for 8 to 10 generations, and then boom, the longest anyone can do after that is 10 years.
Well, again, if they were living with these ghosts and if a lot of the ghosts are related to the family, or if they are the family, maybe they knew how to live with them, or maybe the ghosts didn't get kind of riled up until after that family left. Maybe they were quiet because that family lived there for so long.
It's a little bit different when the ghost is your Aunt Susie who used to bake you cheese bread.
Right, right. Maybe they just didn't talk about it because it was Aunt Susie who used to bake you cheese bread and they didn't care. They just knew, they were familiar.
When it's not your family ghost, all of a sudden it's creepy and scary.
That's right. It's like you walk into your house and everything is fine. You walk into your friend's house and it smells like cheese.
Right,
And they don't notice. They walk into your house and it smells like Nag Champa. And you're
right,
like, no, it never smells like Nag Champa in here. But
right,
yes, it does. You just don't smell your own house. I guess you
right.
don't notice your family ghosts, but other people do.
Yeah, because they're your people.
Right.
So yeah, so no one's been able to keep ownership for extended periods of time. Dun dun dun, up till now. So these folks have bought this house. I'll get you their names in a moment.
I'm guessing it's they've kept it for such a long time because they don't live there.
Oh, absolutely not. They rent it out
That's right. That's
for,
right. That's how you get around that is you don't live
for weirdos like us.
you
Right.
don't live there. Then you can keep it.
Right, right. Yeah, no. They rent it out to folks like us, weirdos like us, everyday ghost hunters, people who just want to scare. Um, and I actually do want to point out this is so hysterical.
What, the fact that we definitely have to go and stay there and see if the ghosties are all worn out or if they'll talk to us through a Ouija board?
Do you want to know how commercial they have made this house? And it is a ghosty house, and I ain't saying it ain't a ghosty house.
Oh no, is it super fucking commercial?
They have one package you can get investigate and prepare contact.
$1,200 a night.
But look at it.
$1,500 a night on the weekend.
That's so you can create content for your followers. This one is called the Content Creator Investigation. So
Uh-huh.
they'll hook you up to investigate. And I'm like, are you really going to charge people $1,500 a night just so they can bring? But these are their packages. They have, this is the one I had to tell you about, the medium thing. They will get you 3 hours in the Conjuring House, and you can receive spirit messages from gifted mediums for $175.
Okay. Okay.
This is what I was thinking. I was like, oh my God, I need to find 6 friends who can split $960. For $960, 6 people, 13 to 14 hours. They give you a tour of the house, and then you're on your own till morning.
But you can't record it.
Correct. If you want to record everything, you have
It's
to be
1,200.
correct. You are, I believe, allowed to take pictures. I don't know. I'd have to dig deeper. But anyway,
Wow.
this place is haunted, and I agree. After what I've done, this is no Amityville. This is the real deal. But they're making a damn buck on this shit. They are making a buck. But for like
I'm
100,
sure they are booked the fuck out with ghost hunters, amateur ghost hunters like you and me wanting to experience something that's been in the movies.
for $100, you can do like an hour and a half guided. But yeah, so
As you and I both know, visiting historically haunted sites can be disappointing. Sometimes
correct,
it can be enlightening,
correct,
but very often it
correct.
can be disappointing. I am curious. I would have to see some other ghost hunters some amateurs and some that I respect their experiences there to see if it's
Well,
worth it. Because for $1,500,
that's
I
where
don't know. It better
that's
be
where
worth
this
it.
movie that's where this movie comes into play. You need to go to
Okay.
Prime, Sleepless Unrest. So we're fast forwarding to this movie now. Yeah, I've given you
Okay.
we all know the Conjuring story
All right.
now.
We got the history now. We've got the background. We've got the background. Tell us
Yeah.
what's up with the documentary. What's going on now?
OMG. So this group of folks went there. There was like 4 people. They were, I believe, 2 of them were documentary folks, documentary filmmakers, and 2 of them were paranormal investigators.
That's a good combination. We need some
Yeah,
documentary filmmakers to follow us around.
I know, right? Hey, anybody? You documentary
Hey, we're
filmmaker?
world famous witchy podcasters. Come follow us around. I'd watch that.
You've got 4 people here, and maybe 2 of those people want to see something, but the other 2 you can at least say are relatively objective. These people had the shit scared out of them.
No shit.
Scared out of them.
Oh my gosh. I want to see this investigation now.
No, check this out. In one scene, they're talking to like this roaring radio sound, like as if someone was answering them, like talking through the radio. Because they had all this equipment, the ghost hunting equipment.
Yeah, the stuff that we need to acquire and put on our ghost hunting schoolie for when we do this.
It was like one of those electronic spirit box type things.
Oh, yeah.
So they're talking to this like spirit boxy thing. And like you can actually, it sounds like someone's answering them. And then you're hearing like a bam of a loud noise.
No way.
And then
No
like
fucking way.
you start to see like they're recording, say they're recording a corner of a room, and like you can see a blurriness in the video.
Is it
Now
like
you
an
might
orb? Is it an orb?
no, it's in the shape of a fucking body.
No, no
Like it's
fucking
fucking
way.
crazy.
No way. And this was done recently? Like this
Yeah,
documentary was filmed like really recently?
it was put out in 21.
Fuck
Yeah.
yeah. Shell, we gotta go. Oh my God.
This isn't people that are like adding some Hollywood bullshit. Like you kind of get that Blair Witch seasick from watching the movie feel like this is a legit documentary and like you see it and you hear it and you're like, oh my God. Like I was getting goosebumps for some of it.
Wow. Wow.
The thing is that, these people they were interviewed by other entities. Like, you do a documentary and you got to go on your like promotion circuit.
Mm-hmm.
So they're being interviewed for their like promotion circuit type stuff. And people are like, because Blair Witch was kind of fake. I wish it was real because that would have been great.
Right.
But a lot of people were like, you say this is a documentary, but it seems too good to be true. Is this really real? Some of those four people, I'm not going to name names because that's just mean. If you want to know, look it up on the internet your damn self. They had to actually go and seek mental health therapy
No
being
shit.
in that house.
Damn.
They had to go see their own mental healthcare provider after what they experienced in that house.
Oh, wow. No way.
If you have to go to a frickin' doctor after a ghosty experience, sign my ass up. I want to go.
If it scares someone so badly they need to seek professional help,
Pick
Shell would
me.
like to experience it as well. Thank you.
Pick me.
I'll go for backup, Shell. I'll be your backup.
But like that kind of just takes it to a different level for me. So, Lorraine and Ed Warren could be full of shit, but these people need to go to freaking counseling after a night there.
Wow, damn.
So then I go back to, maybe Ed and Lorraine Warren were a tad Miss Cleo, but maybe they were a little bit legit. Maybe they were 50-50 legit scam.
They might be. Again, we'll have to find out. I don't know. I've heard things both ways. You and I have heard about them. We grew up hearing about them.
Right, right.
And only
They're
recently.
involved in like every based on a true story movie we grew up with.
Exactly. And they started so many different groups and schools and all these different things and they were considered the end all and be all. And only just now have we started to hear the other side. So again, I'm curious really to dig into and to get more into our research on this, but
They were very good at marketing.
maybe, or maybe they did have these connections, or maybe like a lot of things getting into my story, when we get into my story, there's some truth and some fiction, but there's a lot of kernels of truth to it. Who knows? There might be, maybe it's one of those things that got to be overblown. Maybe there were true things that happened and then it got embellished, or maybe it's all fucking bullshit. I don't know.
I don't know, but the folks that were in this house, they walked away with scratches.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the physical ones, those freak me out. When people have those unexplained bruises and scratches and they're like, oh, hey, something touched me. And then they pull up their sleeve and there's a scratch there.
Yeah, this
Fucking
wasn't
freaks me
just
out.
things that go bump in the night. This was these people had blood drawn,
Oh, wow.
blood
Fuck.
drawn. And
Well, that would make me want to go see a professional for sure.
And that was definitely apparently a fuck around and find out moment for some of these folks. I don't know if it was the paranormal folks or the documentary filmmakers, but their asses were freaked out and they didn't realize what they were getting themselves into.
Oh, that sounds so creepy. So it's worth the $1,200 during the week, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I read a story about someone who went there, a more lower level amateur paranormal group went there to do a amateur investigation. And it got to the point within a few months after that visit, the mental health issues were too hard to overcome, and that person succumbed to suicide.
Oh,
Um,
fuck. No, really?
they had left documents, written documents saying that they felt that ever since they had been at that house, that there was a cloud of evil following them around,
Oh, wow.
that there was something that attached itself to them at that house that left that house with them, kind of thing. Like they
Wow, that's
basically
really
felt like
shitty.
they felt like they were driven crazy. So some real badass shit has come from this house.
Yeah, I guess so. That's really fucking shitty.
Whether you believe it, you don't believe it, people's lives have either been extremely affected or unfortunately have ended due to their experiences at this house. So, say what you will about Ed and Lorraine Warren, but the shit's the real deal, man, and I want to go.
Right, right. Who knows? And we'll find out about Ed and Lorraine Warren But it sounds like this house is really fucking spooky.
But if you're looking for a little ooh, and you've got Amazon Prime, check it out. It is actually it's worth the hour and whatever that the movie is. It's called Sleepless Unrest: The Real Conjuring Home, and again, it's a 2021 documentary.
Well, I'm going to be watching it right after we're done recording because that sounds fascinating.
But like, I just wish that I had full faith in Ed and Lorraine Warren because between the documentary and then some of the other experiences, like the person who ended up committing suicide,
Mm.
that's some shit. That's some
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah, that's a wild story. That's pretty fucking wild.
That's some shit. So that's my Conjuring story. If we're going to compare this against Amityville and The Exorcist, this one 110% legit for real. And like I said, I based on what I've found out, I don't know if it's like ancestral land haunting, if it is some ghost stuck in the house, or if this really is some demon portal to hell.
Wow, it sounds like it could be all sorts of that because the history of the house and where it's located and who
A
knows.
weird triangle I discovered. I discovered a triangle.
Right? Shell Stone Triangle. What did we call it?
We're gonna
Terrible
call it
Triangle.
Shellstone Triangle.
Shell Stone Triangle, the terrible triangle of terror.
Yeah, the terrible triangle of terror.
Something like that.
Yeah,
We'll
absolutely.
figure it out.
But yeah,
We'll workshop it.
so this one's a real one. This is definitely, it makes me want to go back and watch all the Conjuring movies again. Now that I know they're real.
I'm definitely going to be watching that documentary because that sounds very, very interesting. But for my story, I am also taking us to a historically haunted house. And
Beat
this
that, beat this one, okay? Beat that. Go.
I think I can. I'm pretty sure I can. But this house has also been featured in quite a few different places. Let's see, Unsolved Mysteries, Ghost Adventures, Most Terrifying Places in America, Ghost Hunters, Taps,
I
a
love
whole
Taps.
bunch of them. Yeah.
I
I don't
love
remember which show it was that I originally watched it, but I do remember the ghosts trapped in the mirror and the handprints that appeared on the mirror.
Oh God.
Yeah, right? So we're going to
Bloody
start at the
Mary,
beginning.
Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody
Stop
Mary.
it, Shell, stop it! What are you doing? Oh my gosh, don't do that.
I don't think it works on a Zoom screen.
Are you sure that almost counts like a mirror? Oh, you're freaking me out. Don't do that, Shell. Oh my gosh. I'm too high for that. Don't
All
do
right.
that.
All right. Take us to your house.
Okay.
What year is this?
Oh, we are also in the late 1700s and the early 1800s for most of this story.
Okay.
All right, so we are going down to St. Francisville, Louisiana, which is not too far away from Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Okay.
And we're going to a place that's currently called the Myrtles Plantation. And it is a gorgeous antebellum, which I'm still not really sure what that means. I think it refers to an era, but it's an antebellum mansion. It's a 20-room mansion that you can currently stay at as a bed and breakfast. And they do have some houses on the grounds as well.
I always love the places that you can actually stay at.
Right? Now, the Myrtle Plantation was built in 1796 by a gentleman named David Bradford, who was actually a general in the army.
Okay.
Now, General Bradford built this house originally as an 8-room home on 600 acres of land, and he named it Laurel Grove. And it was actually his prison for a short period of time. General Bradford was part of what was called the Whiskey Rebellion.
I love whiskey.
Right? Me too. So back in the day, apparently, President George Washington and Alexander Hamilton decided that they needed to raise some money. And one of the ways they were going to do that was by taxing whiskey and the people who made whiskey.
Bitches.
Right? For real. It was not a popular thing. And so there was an uprising in Pennsylvania, which is where Bradford was from. And so he was part of this rebellion. We're not going to get into that, but they lost, obviously. And some of the people were held accountable for their actions by President Washington. And Bradford was put under house arrest. And so he went and he stayed at this 8-room, really nice house down in Louisiana on house arrest for his part in the Whiskey Rebellion.
Rich people jail.
Yeah, so rich people jail. Oh, they were like, oh yeah, you need to go to jail for your part in this Whiskey Rebellion. Go stay at your nice house in Louisiana.
Right.
So pretty much that's what he did. Now, he had built this house. This is going to go back to one of your favorite things, Shell. The land itself had originally belonged to the Tunica people. that lived, they were an indigenous people that lived along the Mississippi River.
Mhm.
And according to rumor, this area had originally been part of a sacred burial ground.
Oh boy.
And when David Bradford built his house, he actually dug up quite a few graves.
What is wrong with this guy?
And they decided to just dispose of everything. All the artifacts and graves that they found, they cleared, they desecrated and burned, and then built his house right there.
All right, so you don't even have to finish your story because we just know that this is going to end in fucking shit show destruction.
Now, there's nothing specifically saying in historical record that that's exactly what happened, just local legend, but the area did indeed belong to the Tunica people at the time. So it could possibly be true. Not
Right?
sure.
Probably.
Right. Now, so he lived there alone for quite a few years under, house arrest until he was pardoned by President John Adams in 1799. So about 5 years. The Whiskey Rebellion was from about 1791 to 1794. So he stayed there for about 5 years under house arrest.
So basically what they did was they said, if we're going to make you on house arrest and you don't have to stay in your cold house in Pennsylvania, we'll send you to Louisiana where it's warm and you'll be comfortable.
He left his family in Pennsylvania in order to keep them safe because he was the only one that was in trouble. And he had wanted to live along the Mississippi River anyways. And he had purchased this land and built a small house there. And so he went there to kind of keep his family safe. And then he was already living there in exile when he was tried and found guilty and told to stay there as house arrest.
Gotcha.
So his family stayed in Pennsylvania and he was in Louisiana. So he moved his wife Elizabeth and their 5 children from Pennsylvania to the plantation once he was pardoned. He died there in 1808 and his widow Elizabeth ran the plantation until 1817 when her daughter Sarah Matilda married a gentleman named Clark Woodruff, who was 26 and Matilda was 19 at the time. Now, here's where legend and history kind of differ.
They always do.
The legend of the Myrtle Plantation being haunted begins with Clark Woodruff and Elizabeth Woodruff.
Is the people haunting it or the people that see that there's some hauntings going on?
Well, the people that kind of caused the most famous haunting of the house.
Okay.
Now, during this time, this is before the Civil War, so slavery is unfortunately still a thing. And as many plantations did, they had enslaved people on the grounds.
We don't condone that, but unfortunately it was what happened at that period of time.
Right. Yeah, that was the history. It was fucked up, but that was the history. So Clark Woodruff did an even more fucked up thing, and he took one of the young slave girls and decided to make her his concubine and raped her repeatedly. She's called in some stories his lover, but obviously she was a young girl. She was an enslaved person. She had zero agency to be his girlfriend. So her name was Chloe, and she worked in the house because he wanted to keep her close so that he could rape her whenever he wanted to. Rumor has it that he then picked another younger girl to start having, to start paying attention to. And Chloe was sent back out to the fields and to do more and more menial labor. Now, to try and prevent this, she took to spying. There's a lot of different reasons given for why she started listening in to his office, but one of the many is that she was trying to protect herself from being sent back out to the fields where she would be treated much more harshly. So she was caught listening into his office one day with her left ear pressed against the wood, and as punishment, Clark Woodruff had her left ear cut off. And so after that, she took to wearing a green turban on her head. But unfortunately, this didn't stop her from being sent to more and more menial labor, and she was working in the kitchen and out in the fields. Shortly after this happened, one of the children had a birthday, and she was part of the crew that was cooking in the kitchen, and she was specifically tasked with baking a birthday cake for the family. Now, whether it was revenge or whether she was trying to do something so that she could later look like a hero, she took the oleander plant, the juice from the oleander plant, which is a poison very similar to arsenic from what I understand, and she put that into the cake batter and baked the cake and served it to the family and to the children. People are divided onto whether she was doing this as revenge or if she was trying to make them sick so that she could then cure them and get a position of honor back in the household. But whatever her intentions were, legend has it that Elizabeth and her 2 daughters were killed by the birthday cake, and that Clark was sickened but didn't die.
Probably because he was a bigger person and it would take a higher dose to kill him.
Correct. It's said that their deaths were recorded as yellow fever because no one knew what caused their deaths, and so it was determined that it was an illness that caused their deaths.
Yellow fever was an easy go-to back then.
Yeah, and exactly. Yellow fever was a very easy go-to. So historically, their deaths are recorded as yellow fever. But what lore tells us is that they died due to this cake, and that when Chloe went back to her family in the shacks with all the other enslaved people, they found out about it. And rather than being punished themselves, they decided to punish Chloe and hung her from a tree and then threw her in a river.
Oh, shit.
The other story is that when Clark Woodruff caught wind that it was an illness that killed his family, but Chloe baking poison into the cake, he hung her. And the most likely story is that he's the one who hung her
Right.
and threw her into the river. Now, it's said that Chloe haunts the house, and there's actual photographic evidence of her that was determined. I guess they've shown it to different people who study film, and they have determined that it can't be explained by shadows or anything like that, and it is the right height to be a woman. And you can clearly see what looks to be the height of a young woman with in a dress with a turban around her head.
And that was what her physical description was.
That's correct. People will also see the children playing in the household, two young blonde girls. They're also known to be seen very clearly when it's raining, specifically out in the front yard. When it's raining, you can see the young girls playing in the yard as if it's a bright, clear, sunny day.
That's weird.
Yeah. There's also pictures of young girls, both what looks to be young Black girls that could be enslaved children, and also young children that might be the two girls that died there in the background of people's photos in windows. But they're very often seen. And the story that's very specifically told on some of these ghost hunting shows, and that I specifically remember, is about a large ornate mirror that's in the front hallway, the entryway of the household. And at the time, some people had a superstition where if there was a funeral going on or a death in the house, they would often cover up all the mirrors and cover up any reflective surface.
I know of that superstition, so that's definitely a widespread thing.
And rumor has it that this particular mirror, for whatever reason, was not covered after Elizabeth and her two daughters died. And so their spirits are trapped in the mirror. And you can see handprints will often appear in the top of the mirror where nobody could reach to put them. So small child-sized handprints will appear on the mirror, and people report seeing a woman and two children, two young girls, reflections in the mirror when they're not in the hallway.
Oh, I just got visions of people like inside the mirror clawing to get out. Let me out! Let me out!
That's fucking spooky, and I hope that's not what's happening, but people say that they do see them, and it's well known to be a very haunted mirror.
That mirror's still up?
That mirror is still up, and they will tell you the story of the mirror. In some of the videos that I've seen, you can clearly see handprints on it, and in other videos, there's nothing on it at all. So they do sometimes appear and sometimes not. Now, the house is rumored to be the location of more than 10 murders. Not just Elizabeth and her two children, possibly. Whether those were murders or accidents are to be debated. But so after Elizabeth died, after Clark's wife Elizabeth and his children died, he moved and left a caretaker to manage the home. And it was left to a gentleman named Ruffin Gray Sterling. Now, the Sterling family also had run-ins with problems here, including Lewis Sterling was the oldest son of Ruffin Gray Sterling, and he supposedly had all sorts of, you ever heard of the House of the Rising Sun in New Orleans? Now, Lewis was a known frequenter of many gambling establishments and had all sorts of debts and loved a good poker game. Supposedly, I don't know if it was during a game or if it was someone just surprised him at his home, but Lewis Sterling was in the dining room of the plantation, and he was stabbed to death over a gambling debt. And it's rumored that he tried to crawl across the floor and died just inside the doorway of the dining room.
Oh.
People in the dining room, whether they know the story or not, will often trip just before they get to the threshold of the door.
Trip over what?
over nothing. There's nothing there. There's no rug, there's no indentation, there's nothing that would cause people to trip, but it's as if they're tripping over the dead man's body.
Oh, wow.
And it's a well-known phenomenon in that spot, whether you know of him dying there or not.
Oh, wow. It's weird. That's weird. That's weird because people tripping over nothing without even knowing. So
Yeah.
you know that it's not like, oh, I'm just going to pretend.
Yep. Back during the Civil War, according to legend, three Union soldiers broke into the house, and it is known to have been looted quite extensively during the war. So legend says that the first three Union soldiers that broke into the house were trying to loot it. They were in the gentleman's parlor when three Confederate soldiers came in after them and killed all three of them in the gentleman's parlor. It's said that when they tried to clean the blood from where those three men fell, no matter how many times they cleaned it, the spot kept coming back. It looks to be, you can see very clearly the shape of three men laying closely together in this spot. And it said that for over a month, they tried to clean that spot and it would return.
Oh, wow.
Rumor has it that it's not there all the time, but every once in a while, that spot will come back and it will remain despite attempts to clean it until it just disappears on its own.
That's creepy.
Another family that lived there was the Winter family. In 1868, Kate Winter, who was their 3-year-old daughter of the family that lived there, was dying of yellow fever or typhoid fever. Again, one of the major diseases that was going around at the time. And nothing was working to heal their daughter. So in desperation, her parents brought in a local voodoo priestess to try and see if she could cure their dying child. Despite her best attempts, she was unable to cure little Kate and she died.
No.
The family unfortunately blamed the voodoo priestess because, of course, it was her fault. She was the last ditch attempt. And because it didn't work, it's all her fault that Kate died, and they killed her on the spot. Kate is very often seen in the bedroom where she died, a mischievous child, including one account that a caretaker retold about a gentleman who stayed in the room where Kate died. He was awakened in the middle of the night. And when he opened his eyes to see what was going on, he saw a young girl standing over him who very excitedly exclaimed, "Hello," and then promptly disappeared. And he was so freaked out, he had to get up and go talk to somebody about it right then. And so told the caretaker at the time what had happened, was explained that it was probably the ghost of young Kate. The priestess is also seen sometimes walking up and down the hallway outside the bedroom. So Kate's father, William, also passed away in the house a few years after Kate died in 1871. He was living in the house, heard a noise outside, went out and was shot by a man on horseback.
Oh, shit.
Went back into the house and climbed the stairs as his wife came running down the stairs to him, and he died in her arms on the 17th step.
Oh.
And people say that on that step, if you're standing on that step, you can feel the immense sadness, and people will also hear him running into the house and up the steps, only to stop at the 17th step.
How many steps are there?
I don't know, but that sounds like a lot.
I mean, most traditional houses have about 10 to 12 steps before there's at least a landing.
Well, we're talking about these old slave plantations, which are one of the weirdest things to me because they're absolutely gorgeous buildings and grounds with the shittiest, slimiest, most disgusting history ever. It's the weirdest thing. But a lot of these places had those sweeping staircases. So I wouldn't be surprised if this front entryway staircase had, like 150 fucking steps for people to climb up. Because, after you have your enslaved people do your hair and your makeup and your big fat fucking gown, you got to waltz your ass down these big steps and look impressive, right?
Right.
So, fuckers. Anyway, so he died on the 17th step in the arms of his beloved wife, and people still hear his dying footsteps. In 1927, another murder occurred there. There was a caretaker staying at the house, and it's disputed whether he died at one of the outbuildings of the house or whether he died in the main house itself, but he definitely died on the grounds of the plantation, and he was killed during a robbery. So there's a lot of people that were murdered at this one location, and their ghosts all seem to roam the house, and people keep getting photographic evidence of them. And of course, there's always your there's always your tales of doors opening, closing,
Right.
items being moved from one place to another.
The
Those are
knockings, yeah.
knocking super, super common. And the caretaker will tell you that a lot of people don't stay the night. I mean, they haven't gone so far as to eliminate checkout, as far as I know, but people. But people staying in some of these very haunted rooms don't stay the whole night because of the activity that happens is so very prevalent. I do have to tell you, there is no record of an enslaved woman named Chloe being part of the household.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything though. That
That's
doesn't
right.
mean, yeah, they didn't necessarily keep great records, A, and B, even less great records of their, we'll call them staff. How about that?
Yeah. And if they did kill someone that they were keeping like that, it's possible that they would have wiped out any record of her
I was going to
anyway.
say they're not going to document that shit. Hey, I murdered this girl
Right.
on April 23rd, 1842. Jot that down in the history book. Yeah, no,
Exactly. And if
no.
she had been born on his plantation, odds are even her birth might not have been recorded.
Right,
So
right.
this poor woman could have been wiped out from history. But there is no historical record of her. Also, Elizabeth and her two children, a son and a daughter, not two daughters, were the ones that died of yellow fever, but they were marked as dying of yellow fever. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what they died of. They
Correct.
did all die within a very short time of each other. So the house has a lot of a sad history to it, and it still continues to have hauntings to this day. I was looking through some of the TripAdvisor and some of
I
the
was going to
other
say,
different.
what's the deal? Is it a privately owned? Can you go tour this bitch? What's going on here?
Both of those are true. It is privately owned. You can go tour it. It is a bed and breakfast. You can stay in the house or in
Ooh.
one of the small cottages that's placed around the house, so you can go check it out and see that they are currently definitely catering to the haunted
The
side. They are
paranormal.
fully embracing the
Yeah.
hauntedness of this place, and they're more than happy to tell you all about it and host you if you're going to go do some ghost hunting.
That seems to be the same with the Conjuring House. It seems that and that's kind of a theme going on at the moment. All these places, sorry, I'm trying to pack my pipe.
Oh, I'm gonna pack a pipe too. Let's pack together.
All these places, they see that this is the current trend. This is kind of the
Oh yeah, it's super
right
popular.
now.
You and I want to stay at all these places. I imagine our
Right.
listeners want to stay at all these places.
I mean, let's be realistic. We're not the only paranormal, spooky, ghosty
What?
podcast out there.
No, no, we're the only
Strange,
ones, Shell.
strange
It's
but
just
true
us.
fact. So, a lot of these people, they see a way to make money. It's kind of like how I look at Salem. As long as there's interest in witches, there's money to be made in the witch city. Same thing with these houses. As long as there's interest in paranormal, there's money to be made at these houses. Rock on with your bad self.
And honestly, places like the Conjuring House can charge as much as they do because as this
Because
document
it's really, these things are happening.
enough stuff is happening there. Whereas like the places that we went to in Salem, it was $7 or 20
Right, right,
bucks.
right,
And
right.
it was a nice tour. It was a great tour, but I wouldn't say that they were very paranormal.
I wasn't running, screaming and crying, seeking therapy.
Right. We weren't running into ghosts everywhere, just a few tingles here and there, really. And that was
Right,
about
right.
it.
You got to kind of look at it as you look at tarot readers. Are you going to get a tarot reading for $20 or are you going to get a tarot reading for $80? You get what you pay for. And it's kind of some of these ghosty paranormal experiences are the same. You get what you pay for.
Right.
Are you going on a guided tour that's 1750 for 3 hours? Or are you going to go and pay freaking $1,500 to go to the Conjuring House? So you're going to get what you pay for.
Right. And obviously do your research because there might
Right.
be, these $1,500 places might be complete bullshit too. Definitely if people are consistently paying it and consistently seeing things, then
Check
it's
out
worth it.
reviews. Check
Yeah,
out
check the reviews.
reviews, and just like anything, if you question it, look elsewhere.
Yeah, and if there's too much, like when we ran into the Amityville, or there was an asylum I looked into at one point where if it's just coming up as bullshit too much times, Don't try to force something that's not there. If
I
it's just
remember that.
bullshit, move
I
on.
was so excited that you finally were going to do a episode on an asylum, and come to find out it was a bullshit story. I was heartbroken.
I was super excited too, but I think that kind of falls into what you're talking about now is that this is very popular. And so
Right.
people want to capitalize on it. And I had read this blurb, basically a very short teaser paragraph about this super haunted asylum. But then when I looked into it, that blurb was the only thing that existed.
Right.
That was the only information. And even when I checked in with people, that was all they could tell me was regurgitate basically the same three sentences. And so if it's just not there, it's just not there.
Right.
And maybe they're trying to hype things up to kind of capitalize. You know, maybe there's a small inkling of truth and they're just trying to blow it up to capitalize on something that's popular at the moment.
As long as
So
there's internet, there will be scammers.
that's
Scammers.
right.
Yeah.
So do your due diligence. And I think both places that we've talked about, obviously the Myrtle Plantation does not charge that much. They don't charge as much at all, but you know, they have so many different stories from everybody that goes there
Read
and
reviews. That's how you know. Read the reviews. And if everybody says that, wow, there's something to this, then go.
right.
Pay whatever they ask, because there might be something to it. And you're not going to know if you don't go. But like if someone's regurgitating the same three sentences, fuck that. Go to a place that you're going to have some sort of legit experience.
Exactly. So that asylum was part of kind of like the growing trend. But these two places, the Myrtles isn't very expensive to stay to. It is kind of expensive, but they have different accommodations for people and they do have the tours. And there is a tour that comes complimentary with your stay. But it's one of those places that has so much history to it. And I thought it was really interesting. Speaking of, I almost forgot to say, one of the families that recently owned it was the Myers family, and they owned it like in the 70s and 80s.
What's it with it, the 70s and 80s?
Exactly. This is kind of where the Chloe story may have originated because the Myers family had a family legend that they didn't really talk about a woman, the ghost of a woman that was often seen walking around the plantation and the home in an old time dress wearing a green turban. And they didn't like to talk about her. This isn't something that was known until about 1987 when Frances Myers took a picture and talked about it. And she said she was asleep in a bedroom downstairs and was awakened by a black woman wearing old time dress and a green turban. And she says this woman was holding a candlestick in her hand. And the whole image was so real to Frances. She said that she could see the glow of the candle around this woman.
Oh, wow.
And she was absolutely terrified. She started screaming and like reached out to touch this apparition. The woman never moved, but just as her hand reached this apparition, it vanished and the woman was gone. There are a lot of tales in the Myers family of seeing this woman, and they didn't know who she was. And so it wasn't until someone kind of looked into it that they came up with the story or found the story of Chloe, the legend of this mistress or this young woman that the man of the house used to rape.
Now, don't tell me that Ed and Lorraine Warren were there, were they?
As far as I know, they did not go there. I don't know. But I do know that they, again, I listed off a bunch of them in the beginning. They have been the subject of so many professional ghost teams, and they have had very freaky experiences there. So the place is definitely haunted. Whether it's by a woman named Chloe or not, we don't know. There's also some legends of an indigenous woman, a young Native American girl, that in a lot of recounts is naked for some reason. I guess there's a large pond on the property that has a small island with a gazebo. Well, it now has a gazebo on it. But this woman has been seen throughout history on that island. And I don't know what her story is, but she is known to protect children, and I believe has even saved a young boy from drowning by warning his mother that she needed to check on her child before disappearing, saying, "Your children will come to no harm here," and then disappearing into nothing. And the woman was able to get to her young son and save him before he drowned.
I want to have a pond that has a little island in the middle of it on my property, damn it.
That has a ghost that saves people from drowning.
Very Princess Diana like.
Right? So I don't know what her story is. I wasn't able to find much information on her, but she could be. I've done some tours in haunted places. And I do know that sometimes the tour guides might take a little bit of liberal license, of creative license with some of their stories. And that's why I think we get so many different variations. And sometimes these variations are ones that you only hear when you go to the property, and they're slightly different from another story that you've heard. So the truth is out there somewhere, but I don't know what it is yet.
Reminds me of X-Files. The truth is out there,
Yeah, I kind
but
of did that on purpose. It's such a good catchphrase. I mean, come on, the truth is out there somewhere.
just gotta look. But I think that a lot of these houses have something similar in common, and I think it's just a lot of grief, a lot of death, a lot of unhappiness, and that
Yeah.
sticks with a place.
Oh,
That
yeah.
sticks with a place. And some of these people that don't pass on and are kind of stuck in that in between, they're stuck where they know, and where they know is home, and home might be what's now your current home.
Yes. And Earth and the land is such a powerful magnet, such a
Right,
powerful attractant of spirit. It's that hearth and home that we're all so nostalgic for, that we all are drawn to. It's no surprise that people are stuck there. And in
right,
both of our stories, mine has the indigenous people that could possibly have been buried there. And desecration of that obviously would cause problems, a disturbance in the energy of the land.
right,
Yours has all the people that died there, that are buried there. So much history of unusual death in both places. I mean,
right.
how many pieces of land are going to have 10 murders? Now, obviously, as a plantation, more than likely it had hundreds more murders of enslaved people that
Than
they're
you
not
could
even
even
fucking
find.
talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So the place is just run red with blood. It's just got a history that's shitty, so it's bound to have these spirits that are restless and are stuck there.
and unfortunately, kind of the history with our country in general, a lot of that is prevalent.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these older East Coast, pre 1800 houses, that's why the East Coast seems to have so many of these hauntings, in my opinion, is
Right,
so much bullshit, so much shitty shit happened there.
right. And, we kind of brought it on ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good point. We are haunted by the deeds of our past, by the misdeeds of our past, and in a lot of ways we deserve it. I guess in some ways we're capitalizing off of it because that's also what we do. I don't know.
The sad thing is you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But I think the big thing to remember is we brought this shit on ourselves.
Yeah, so true. So true.
I don't know how else to say it, but you can't go to a new land, murder and enslave its original inhabitants, desecrate their burial sites, their ritual grounds, their sites of worship, and expect that shit to end well. You can't enslave people and murder and rape and pillage and expect this shit to end well.
Right. If you do want to go stay at the Myrtles Plantation, you definitely can. They do have places where you can stay at the Myrtles. But there is also something called the Whitney Plantation that I want to mention. And this is one of if you're going to take a tour of a southern plantation that used to have enslaved people at it, the Whitney Plantation is a good one to go to because they're not just going to talk to you about mint juleps on the porch and beautiful dresses and the veranda and look at this architecture and isn't it just grand? They're not going to do that bullshit with you. They're going to give you the actual real tour. They're going to talk about the enslaved people and how these houses could not have been built if it wasn't for that, and that this very pretty facade housed a very dark and brutal underbelly. And
Sinister.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
sinister is a very good way to put it. Sinister underbelly. And so if you do want to go to a plantation and kind of actually get some of the real history, I have heard of the Whitney Plantation, and I've heard they do a very good job of that.
Yeah.
So they're not
Well,
going to give you the romanticized, Gone with the Wind version. They're going to give you the real version.
I think that we both really kind of we both had a really good go today. We both had some good
Yeah.
places. We had some good deets.
And I like that both of them have kind of a history of, is it true? Is it not
It's
true?
not
And
true.
damn, it seems to be fucking true.
Yeah, and even though you immediately start getting pulled one way or the other, something pops up that whips you back in the other direction. So
Right, exactly.
I think we both home runned it today. I think we're both winners. I think we
I
both
agree.
got it.
Shell, I think we need to go visit both places and then we can decide which one is the scariest. We'll have to do a ghost tour in both of them.
All right,
We know which one will be cheaper. We just need to know which one's most haunted.
We need to start putting this out to our listeners. You know, we're gonna have to get it together here a little bit and start offering to do some options for you folks to buy some tarot readings from us, because we're gonna have to start actually like starting to fund some of these trips. So we're going to come up with ways so that you can assist us in roaming all around the country and finding.
That's right. So many places to explore, so many things to do, so many ghosts to find.
I just want to chat with some of these ghosts and be like, what the fuck are you terrorizing people for?
Right?
Like, what do you need? What can we do for you? What do you need?
Michelle is going to soothe the savage ghost. Got a poltergeist? Call Shell. She'll calm him the fuck down. Chill him the F out.
Pretty
Have
much.
a toke. There you go. All right. Well, so tune in next week on the Stoned Witches Hour for episode 53, where maybe Shell is getting ghosts high and telling them to sit the fuck down and don't be so scary, damn it.
I'll probably have plenty to share because I'll still have some of that 15 grams for $90 left.
Nice. But tune in next week at Wednesday at 4:20 a.m. for episode 53 of the Stoned Witches Hour.
And in the meantime, stay high and stay spooky.
We'll see you then.